Okay, perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name's Anjana. I'm the president of Creative Writing Club. Our club is a safe space for writers on campus to celebrate their work, to share their work, to workshop their work. We work closely with the Zephyr, which is the artistic journal on campus. Shameless plug, the new edition of the Zephyr is coming out tomorrow at 5 p.m. in the Ketchum Art Gallery. So if you are available, definitely be there. Yeah, very exciting. In addition, our club hosts reading events. We are currently hosting a writing contest with Aging Maine through the College of Osteopathic Medicine to talk about intergenerational relationships. We also take part in National Novel Writing Month, and we do have members who have completed it. Rachel, shout out to you, wrote for 2 years in a row, wrote more than 60,000 words within a single month, like a rough draft of a whole novel, which is amazing. And of course, thank you to our advisor, Jesse Miller, who is very supportive, and without his help, we wouldn't have our amazing events on campus. And I always shout out Beanie Laureate, who was the the former president and the founder of Creative Writing Club. So without them, we wouldn't have this club in the first place. So enough about me. This is our second annual reading event and poetry celebration. So April is National Poetry Month. I'm sure a lot of you know that. So according to the Academy of American Poets, National Poetry Month is here to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets, encourage reading of poems, increase kind of the media attention to poetry, and encourage support in general for poets and poetry in the art. And to celebrate that here at UNE, we are very honored to have for the second time Maya Williams, the 7th Portland Poet Laureate of Portland, Maine. So a little bit on Maya before we get started. Maya Williams, she is a religious, Black, multiracial, non-binary suicide survivor who was selected as Portland, Maine's 7th Poet Laureate for a July 2021 to July 2024 term. Maya received a Master's in Fine Arts in Creative Writing with a focus in poetry from Randolph College in June of 2022. Her debut poetry collection, Judas and Suicide, was selected as a finalist for the New England Book Award. They also have a second poetry collection, Refused a Second Date. Maya was selected as one of the Advocates Champions of Pride in 2022 and one of Maine Humanities Council's recipients of the Constance Carlson Public Humanities Prize in 2024. And you can follow her at mayawilliamspoet.com. I am honored to welcome Maya today for our reading event.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me for a second time. Last April, I read primarily from my first collection, Judas and Suicide. Now I'll be reading from my second collection, Refused a Second Date. It does include content about bad dates. It includes content about domestic violence. It includes content about loved ones lost to suicide. So please take care of yourselves as needed if those are things that hit a little too close to home. I have, how many poems do I have? I have about 15 poems to share with y'all, as well as some updates about other things about this second collection that I'm really excited about. I'm so sorry. Thank you for the tech help. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you all so much for being here. You could literally be anywhere else, and you chose to stay here and listen to poems for an hour and ask questions about poems afterwards. So thank you all so much. This first poem is called Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, 2017. And this is in response to when I was living in India for 3 months. I begin to accept the sun's personal mission to wake me up at 4 a.m., cascading through the large windows of the apartment each morning. How can I be mad at him for emphasizing my favorite part of this place? I stretch out my toes and feel the lack of socks. He's made me the hottest I've felt in years. I haven't slept with socks or blankets on in a month. Good morning, good morning. I am awake now. I hear the bustle of rickshaws and distant conversations from early risers outside. He gets too much out of getting folks' days started. I think about how my Mother's Day just ended. I should call her to let her know I am okay. Let her know I will go to therapy again. Good Morning asks me to ignore that, so I play Halsey and Ali X's albums. I listen to Casanova 3 times. I head to the refrigerator and grab a plump mango. it smells so fresh. I puncture the skin with my front teeth and slurp the sweet syrup like a smoothie. We have a lot of people to meet today. I hope I do not get sad again. Good morning asks me to ignore that. So I suck my mango dry and return to my bedroom. I lay down and stare at him through my favorite part of this place. I know we need to say goodbye in a couple of months. Good morning asks me to ignore that. Thank you. And yeah, feel free to snap along with the poem. Feel free to go, huh, or make commentary as you're listening to the poem if you'd like. If you'd like to sit in silence, that is also very much welcome. How to become a manic pixie dreamboat in the movie of your life. Tell your dreams to your potential, official, significant other. Listen to theirs in return. Do everything in your power to help their dreams come true. Place a bookmark in your dream journal. Dog-ear the page for a behind-the-scenes detail. A director's cut commentary. There are only a few people interested in how the movie gets made anyway. Most just sit there, ready to consume, ready to immerse. Make the viewer strive to become the hero who is your partner. They strive for the ideal romance that is crafted by you either keeping your mouth shut or pursuing adventure to the point of making your partner interesting. It's a thankless job to be the sole reason for that interest and intrigue, but that's okay. You love your role in the mania for passion. You exist for viewing and experiential pleasure. You are a bowl you fill with your partner's emotional wounds, labor, and hyper-idealism. You are your partner's as-needed wet dream, your partner's as-needed wet blanket, your partner's as-needed therapist, your partner's as-needed non-incestuous parent. Besides, there's a reason why your hard work is so popular at the box office. Be compensated through occasional flights of fancy, through begrudged, half-assed, happily repressed long-term commitment. You made your partner. You get to keep them. They get the fans' autographs. You get the verbal contract you've been raised to obtain from your partner. Remember, you both are such good people. Remember, it's okay, your partner will be appreciated for that goodness more. I'm going to read this one next because a good friend of mine, Michelle Shupp, who's the advisor for the civil rights team at Scarborough High School, really loved this poem. So I want to read it because it's given me more confidence as far as like, yes, this is a good poem. I'm very proud of this poem. Thank you for reminding me that it is a good poem. You mean to tell me Marge Simpson and her kids aren't black? I watched The Simpsons for the first time. She wears a silk bonnet to keep her blue curly coils slick going to bed. I may not be wearing mine right now, but folks have definitely seen me in my navy cap at night and brown hair with maintained moisture in the day. Lisa Simpson is a great jazz musician. The more her band teacher shuts her down, the more I want to tell her about teachers who work towards decolonizing music instruction. Bart Simpson got in trouble in school even when he didn't cause it. He is a complete little shit, absolutely. However, he's not responsible every time. Bart reminds me of my brother. Her sisters are always disappointed in the white man she married. Yes, Homer is definitely white. His incompetence is praised while Marge's intelligence is damned. Thank you. So the difference between Judas and Suicide in my first book and Refuse a Second Date for my second book is like the different ways there's like a series of poems that are the backbone of the book. In Judas and Suicide, there were a lot of poems in response to Bible verses where a completed suicide, an attempted suicide, or suicidal ideation took place. But in Refuse a Second Date, I use high buns. And high buns are a type of poem where you have prose in the beginning and then you end the poem with a haiku. And I pair these two different high buns from two different perspectives, and one is from my perspective, and the other is from the other person's perspective who I'm on a date with. So these poems, these high buns, take place at Cinemagic, or at least the drive on the way to onto Cinemagic. Weird first date, Cinemagic. It's the other person's point of view. I pick her up on the corner of Marginal and Chestnut. As I put the movie's location in my GPS, I ask how her night is going. She swifts some of her brown curls behind her left ear and says she's fine. She asks how I'm doing, and I say I'm doing great. Braking at a stoplight, I ask her about her background. Her answer is so exotic. When I tell her, I'm a mutt too. She doesn't talk to me much the rest of the night. Weird. Next one's from my perspective. Racist first date, Cinemagic. Just when I hope tonight will be a fun night, he asks me my least favorite question from white people. I give him my usual answer while we're waiting for the traffic light to turn green. I breathe for a moment. I breathe and look forward to seeing Black Panther. Then he adds, I'm a mutt too. I consider free films and popcorn reparations. This next poem is called Lineage, and this talks about my mother's side of the family. Black woman meets white man before or after Loving versus Virginia. They get married, have children. He has more children without her. When their children grow up, they divorce. Biracial woman meets black multiracial man after his best friend starts dating her sister. They get married, have more children than they can handle. Before their children grow up, they divorce. Black multiracial femme meets white man before or after she loses her desire to live. They never get married or have children. Thank God. Thank you. I workshop these next two high buns a lot, and it's so fascinating because there are some folks who like resonate with it because they're like, yeah, that's such a ridiculous question to ask on a first date. Why? And then sometimes there are cis men who react to this poem, and they're like, that's a justifiable question. I don't understand why people are so upset. So it's oh my gosh, it's amazing. Fun first date, Babylon restaurant. She looks exactly like her picture, only her hair is up and she is wearing a long-sleeve pink dress with gold flats. I pull out her chair to make her feel comfy. I ask if I can make her plate at the buffet of different rice, meats, and fruits. She says she can get it herself. We'll do it in a moment. I don't want her to get food without me. Enough twiddling my fingers. Gotta cut to the chase. What's your relationship like with your father? She has to leave for work. Bad first date, Babylon restaurant. And also notice how a lot of the cis men forget the first line of this section of the poem. Interesting. I'm more confused that he didn't use a real picture because of his nice jawline and eyes than I am disappointed he lied. I look around at other couples and families focused on their food. It gives me comfort they don't know the context of the two of us meeting. I ask about his day, talk about mine for a moment when he asks, what's your relationship like with your father? 30 minutes, I'll leave. This is the shortest date I've ever been on. Speaking of my father, this next poem, also called Lineage, is about my father's side of the family. Black man and black indigenous white woman teach their sons how to pray to God, keep their anger in their hands. Black multiracial man cannot bear to lose biracial woman, keeps her wrists with his hands. Black multiracial femme dates a white man who refutes his violence with confusion, lets it remain a misunderstanding of his own hands. Thank you. I had finished a book tour, and what I learned on the book tour was how to engage audience members in this particular poem. I really appreciate it. So when I do this gesture, you're all going to say a love story. We're going to practice real quick.
A love story.
Wonderful. And this is inspired by Melissa Broder and Bridget Kelly. First kiss. You came out as gay. You killed yourself. You have the biggest impact on my life, whether I like it or not.
A love story.
Second kiss. If I knew the word fuckboy before I started high school, I definitely would have applied it to you. Congrats on your engagement.
A love story.
First bad date. You were a mistake.
A love story.
First date after college. You were not a mistake.
A love story.
Ex after college. I performed stand-up once about how we broke up because I'm better than you.
A love story.
First crush in Maine. You met me at a Leslie Odom Jr. concert. I wrote you a poem about being happy and gross with you. It's still one of my favorite poems.
A love story.
Side tangent, that poem is not in this collection. Second crush in Maine. You met me on Bumble. I wrote you a haiku about cuddling. I wrote a poem about love that could indirectly be about you. I wrote a poem about choices directly about you.
A love story.
Movie date. Am I attracted to you?
A love story.
Backup date. Am I attracted to you? Or I can't afford dinner tonight.
A love story.
First girl, I really, really liked you. Wondered why you stopped answering my texts until I found you on Instagram in the arms of a guy. Congrats on your engagement. I appreciate your nodding right there. Second girl, I really, really liked you. Wondered why you stopped answering my texts until you texted, I don't deserve you. First person like me, people. I date people now. The coolest human in the world. 9 years of friendship. You're still incredible for texting, I deserve you.
A love story.
Third crush in Maine. You met me on Bumble. I wrote a poem about you that was published. We spent time together to grieve our former love stories. I texted you about the publication. You still haven't texted back.
A love story.
Thank you. I always tell this story after I read this poem, and I don't know whether or not I should stop because people haven't told me to stop telling it. That funnily enough, when the announcement about Poet Laureateship came out, guess who's the first person to like that post? You don't text me for 5 years. You like this post? Interesting. Anyways, this next poem is called Good Ink. And there are 3 different sections of it in the book, which is why I'm going to skip around. How has no one caught on yet if I'm sharing a clean draft of something I've written? I'm flirting with you. When I message you through Bumble or text about coming to Bolfini's on a Tuesday night to read poems, I want to make out with you right after you've seen how talented and bubbly I am. The last time we shared ink, I thought of how I shared my best fiction. It wasn't enough for you. I thought of how you held me after reading you a poem about being with you, and it wasn't enough for you to write back. The last time we shared ink, I thought of how my ex before you said, good luck finding someone who will put up with you. How a girl after you said, I don't deserve you. The last time we shared ink, I thought about who else would be worthy to soak it up, become a sponge within my pages, wouldn't try to rinse it out. My partner now still has the card I wrote him for his birthday a week after we met. I still have every letter he's written for each of mine. I hope you find someone you feel safe enough to share your ink with after they give you their own. I hope you finally invest in that second journal we once talked about. I hope you put in the time to fill the first one before you do. Thank you. Side tangent, that person has a baby now. Oh, goodness. Speaking of my partner, these are the only poems that are called Best First Date. Best First Date, Bard Coffee. They brought a whole book with them. Am I running late? Thank goodness I'm on time. And their book does look pretty cool. I don't know whether to go for the handshake or the hug, but luckily they choose for me. I look at the array of flaky and crumbly croissants, biscuits, and muffins. When I look up, they're paying for their own hot chocolate. I wanted to cover it for them. Aw, they're so sweet. I get more pleasure from their laugh than sipping my iced coffee. Would you like to take a walk with me? I ask. I want space to know them. Best First Date, Bard Coffee. I arrived early to sit a while and read Phoebe Robinson's Everything's Trash, but It's Okay on my own. He arrives with the sweetest grin. I ask if I can give him a hug, and he says yes. While he looks around the cafe, I remember my cardboard rewards card in my wallet and immediately get it hole punched in exchange for purchasing a hot cocoa with whipped cream. He frowns until I assure him he can get my next drink. It's a bit more crowded today than I thought, but I'm enjoying sitting across from him. Would you like to take a walk with me? He asks. He holds my hand. Let's go. So this next poem is going to be the only poem that I read that's not from this collection because it's a fairly new poem, and we're going to see how that goes. It's my first time reading it in front of a group of people that isn't my friends over text message. So yeah, thank you for being the space for where I can share this. It's called Attractions. You taking notes on us? She jokes. Closing my brown etched with leaves notebook, I joke back, lying. You're not that interesting. Fair, she shrugs. We laugh. I take a break from playing frisbee with my partner and his friends to write. It's so buggy and hot out. How are they all still playing? I love the way her sun-shaped earrings shimmy while she runs, and how each one is a different color. She takes off her shirt, showing her blue sports bra and flat stomach, hips slightly poking out of her black shorts. I am envious and joyous each time it happens. One of my favorite memories is making out from across the room, her licking honey off the rim of her mug of tea 2 winters ago. I wondered if her tongue would want to exchange with mine. My partner was initially nervous to tell me he had briefly dated her before we got together. I told him it only shows our similar attractions, why he and I continue to exchange tongues. Thank you. This next one is called When I Was. After Joe Brannard. 25% of my being is from something I saw in a movie once. Movies were, and still are, how I learned to behave, to kiss properly, to become addicted to every release of the vampire saga Twilight, everything. There is no denying how movies have shown me a found presence each year, seasonal personality, ephemeral, birthday time often aligned with discovery in myself, a necessary rebooted version. When I was 10, I watched Crystal Harris and sang along to every verse of Supergirl because I desired preppy pulchritude. Princess Diaries had one bop to give me glorious gender binary. I was assigned female at birth, but I just could never navigate girlhood as properly as I or my mother desired. When I was 12 going on 13, I found what I thought was the greatest book and film series of all time, Twilight. When I was 15, I had my second kiss with someone under the twilight glowing of This Means War on Amstar's Green. We were on the verge of believing our fascination for films could make us together forever, until I found my lack of fascination in him. I laughed in his face when he told me he loved me. I thought he was kidding. Thank God I knew enough to refrain the urge to prop up and lie about desires required to be his Supergirl. Couldn't give birth to days of comfort for him. Couldn't save the world just for him. On my birthday at 20, I finally began to question why I ever liked Twilight. Toxicity and sexism was not how to treat women properly. Stephenie Meyer, in her failed attempt to write a gender-bending version of her original novel, only awoke the horrors of the gender binary. Not once, I swear not once, was I tempted to read that one. What else could I find that I could enjoy? The only movies I found were the ones from the 50s my mother watched on her birthday, ones from the 80s and 90s about poetry, ones that made with me in mind and not. When I was 23, Lindsay Ellis's Dear Stephenie Meyer, I'm Sorry made me love the film again. Or if not a complete reverse, at least a chance for proper nuance. Like humming to Supergirl without dismantling my gender queerness improperly. And my, look at the standard of queer as fuck television content I found. Netflix's 2 seasons of Feel Good has Mae Martin as the best awkward version of themselves. Short blonde hair, adorable chuckle, uncanny attitude, a great birthday gift in the form of a Netflix password. When I was 24, out in Twilight, I kissed my partner on a summer night outside Cinemagic. Someone honked once from their white truck, properly screamed, "Whoop!" I didn't consider that the best birthday gift, but I did consider it an affirmation of the love in Twilight I have finally found. This is the last poem I'll read, and then I'll share a couple of things about next steps for this book. This is called Generational Intimacy from My Mother. When I was younger, my mother had her husband at the time rub her feet. I thought it was gross. Where have your feet been? How long have they been trapped in the caves of your shoes? There's no way there's that much love. I kept praying to the Lord above, when can this relationship be over? It got so bad I wanted him to break up with me, cut our 3.5-year-long string, name defeat so I didn't have to. I wasn't strong enough, and neither was Mom. My mother dated an old flame when I began to stare dating apps in their faces. Our hearts were stoves ready to burn for any ingredient or steaming song of intimacy we were promised. Was it sad for us to try to go out and meet folks to curb our loneliness? What could we possibly lose? Mom gained temporary security while I gained poems to peruse and write. We both gained playing games of truth or dare and never have I ever with dates that wouldn't last, preferring their dares over our truths before we took a seat at the tables they reserved for us. We got mad each time that alarm clock in our bodies went off towards someone who didn't belong with us. Finally, we each met someone who didn't feel wrong. That siren frozen on snooze. Stronger ties of support that made us feel glad enough to feel safe and bare together. Absolutely nothing to prove to anyone but ourselves and our hearts, now in comfortable heat. My feet hurt from wearing heels, and my partner rubs my feet. My legs sore tree limbs along the couch, my ankles in his lap. My mother waits for her love to come home and smiles at us. Quietly delighted, she has become my relational muse. I try my best not to glare at her told you so grin. Thank you. So next steps with this book, I got accepted into the Port Fringe Festival for this June. My friend Jared Monjo and I will be performing these poems together. And it's been a while since I've had a partner perform poems with me, so I'm actually really excited for other folks to hear what it would be like for like a distinct voice playing the other days I've been on, or even like some of the solo poems performing them together. And the dates for those performances are June 26th at 8:30 p.m., June 28th at 6:30 p.m. and June 29th at 8 p.m. And it's labeled as Event 4 because there's a range of lovely events you should check out in the Portland area in the Port Fringe Festival. And we're paired with another performance by Carrie Sullivan called The Fruit. We do not know the location yet. But if you'd like to know the location, you can either follow me on social media or you can email me directly at mayawilliams16@gmail.com. So with that being said, thank you all very much for listening to these poems. And one more request before we get into question time. Can I take a selfie with you all?
Okay, I think is that everyone?
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
I was actually wondering for the first poem a little bit more about what you would say your relationship was with that sun coming up and bothering you every morning. Did you find comfort in it at all, or was it just a bother?
That's a good question. Mostly it was a comfort. It's just more so that like I was using that time to do an externship with people, and I realized that I didn't have the usual resources that I had like back in the States, such as contact with my mom or like contact with my therapist. And it's just like, you know what? Let me look at this beautiful sun to make me ignore the problems that I'm internalizing right now. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, to add on to that, like that one really hit home for me because I spent like all my summers growing up in India, like with my grandparents in their home, and I really love the way you capture like the essence of like you don't wear like I would sleep on the floor. I would literally sleep on the floor because it's so hot and it's so humid. I'd sleep on the tile floor because it was like better than sleeping in a bed or like on the couch or something. Mm-hmm. So I think I love the way that you talked about like the sun because I think like specifically in Hindu culture, like the sun is a really big part of that. And I think the way you were talking about like this, that's like the one thing you saw every morning. It's like very similar. Like I know this is like your own feelings and ideas, but like it's very similar to like a big part of the culture. And I thought that was beautiful.
No, I really appreciate that. No, thank you so much for sharing. Like I want writing to do that because I understand I'm writing from my own lived experience, but it's nice when folks can tell me like, oh my God, I resonate with this because of that part of being my lived experience and stuff like that. So yeah, you're totally fine. Thank you so much for your kind words.
I know that you said that during one of your poems that you live in Maine now, but you mentioned living somewhere else before that. Where did you live before Maine?
Before Maine, oh God, I moved around a lot growing up. So I was born in Richmond, Virginia, lived the first 8 years of my life in Fort Washington, Maryland. It's about 15 minutes away from DC. Then moved to Manassas, Virginia, then moved back to Maryland, and then lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, went to college in Greenville, North Carolina, lived in Lucknow for 3 months, and then moved to Portland, Maine. I've been living here now for almost 7 years.
Hey.
Hi!
So I was wondering about, you've got both, you had mentioned that the first book, and they have the sort of themes that are taking them all together, the verses in this and then the dates in this one. And when you're thinking about putting them together, I was wondering, do they show up as like a kernel or like one poem comes up first that way? It's like, oh, this is in the two, and then it starts to think that might work for the rest of them, or it's like, how does the kernel then turn into this is how I'm going to frame the collection around?
That's a really good question. For Refuse the Second Date, I know that like originally it was just going to be a chapbook, like so a smaller collection of just the high bun first date impression poems. And then as I continue to work on it, it's like, oh, it's a full length now because of all these other kernels that are connecting with it. And like, I was really intrigued in analyzing intergenerational patterns of dating because we hear things such as very shitty things such as like, oh, daddy issues and stuff like that, or like, oh, mama's boy as a way to talk about it. But I was very intrigued in like trying to expand the conversation of what it means to like engage in romantic relationships like your parents did, and wanting to analyze that along with like the befuddlements of dating itself and mental health as it intersects with it too. So yeah. Thank you.
You talked earlier about Twilight, but and films in general. But I wanted to know, like, what other movies, series do you really like and have inspired you?
I love that question very much. I know that the series on Netflix, Feel Good, played a huge role in both of these collections, actually. The show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend played a role. Ooh, I see a lot of nods. That makes me happy. We're going to talk so much after this. And oh my goodness, I love shows like that. I love shows that talk about mental health and romance in a way that's nuanced. I'm so sorry. How are your ears? One of my favorite movies is Dead Poets Society, which is but it's a cliche. It's a cliche because it works, at least for me. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Maya, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, I mean, this is just fantastic. So many people in this room are in creative writing classes or have been in classes with me, and the Creative Writing Club is here. And I guess like my brain, when I think about writing, always goes to process. I'm always thinking like, for writers, so much about writing is a thinly veiled form of obsession. And this is how I sort of negotiate my way through the world. And I guess I'm really interested to share with these writers about how to kind of capture material. Like, I mean, I'm thinking about like my own experiences. Driving is a time when my brain is able to actually like let go of some stuff and some ideas come, but I'm driving, and so right, and I'm driving dangerously because I'm trying to capture those ideas. And I just wonder if there's some, it's not necessarily advice, but just sort of talking about the writing process and how things arrive and how you kind of capture those to work further with your poems.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I know that for me, I really appreciate making sure I'm writing with other people. I really enjoy like being with loved ones who can give me honest feedback about anything that I'm working on. I enjoy like when I'm watching something or when I'm looking at something and I'm like, I gotta write that down. Or if I forget to, I'm like, it'll come back. It'll come back. Sometimes it comes back 2 years later, but it'll come back. Or sometimes it doesn't come back, but it'll come back a different way, and that's okay. There's a poet named Andres Serpas, and what he likes to do, he likes to voice record himself, like as he's driving or stuff like that. And people have asked him, like, isn't that like overwhelming to do that? And he's like, no, I love the sound of my voice. What are you talking about? And I love that confidence. I'm still getting used to loving the sound of my voice. Stream of consciousness writing, I know that helps me. Even if I'm writing, I do not know, fuck this shit, I'm tired. Like, because not everything is supposed to be good, and also goodness is very subjective anyway. It's just a matter of just giving yourself space to not write even too. I'm a huge believer in not writing as a way to make it count as writing, such as experiencing your life and watching things or engaging in another artistic format. I also like to act. So there are some times where I read plays and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I wrote this, but I did not write this. Or I'm inspired by certain lines from those and stuff like that. Everyone's process is very, very different. And so I'm not a believer in try these 3 steps and you'll be good. I do not want to perpetuate that. And also our methods change over time too. 'Cause like, one question I would get a lot is like, oh, what's your favorite space to write in? Like, what time do you get up in the morning to write and stuff like that? And I'm like, I have a full-time job. I cannot wake up at 6 a.m. to write every day. That's, no. My life is too busy for that, absolutely not. Or they're like, oh, what's your favorite place? What's your favorite coffee shop? And I'm like, my bed. That is my favorite place to write, my bed. So just recognizing like whatever process may work for you, and recognize that that may change over time and all that good stuff. And also social media is great too. I follow a lot of Instagram accounts that post writing prompts or upcoming writing residencies to apply to and stuff like that. Some of them cost money to apply to, some of them do not. Yeah, the process always changes. So thank you for that. Yeah.
What inspired you to write an entire book about dating? I know it's
Yeah.
a very, at least for me, it's a very prominent subject in my mind, so I understand writing so much about it. Would you say it's just an abundance of the things that you've written?
That's a really good question. I know that for me, I am very intrigued by how interpersonal relationships work. And in my first book, I focused mostly on the dynamics between me and my family whenever talking about religion and talking about like mental health care and religion and blackness and religion. And then for this book, not only did I want to talk about family in a sense as far as like the lineage poems, for example, I was also curious about like on these dates that I went on, like these people thought it went a whole different way than I did.
Right.
And how can I humanize them? Even though quite selfishly I'm like, I need you to know that I was right. But at the same time, it's like, again, someone thinking like, I'm obviously making her comfortable because I'm being a gentleman, but like in my mind I'm like, I feel very uncomfortable because I've been catfished.
Yeah.
And also there's another poem that I didn't read today where like on this first date, this person had asked about, do you want children? And I'm like, no. So that's the only first date impression poem where like it was nobody's fault.
Yeah.
And because it just is what it is. Like people desire different things, and things don't work out, and that is okay. So just really wanting to analyze like what is the other person thinking? There's another poem that I didn't read that was based on a Bumble message exchange where like this person thinks has this gravitas and is like being very sexy, and in my mind I'm like, you are being a sexist asshole.
Yeah, which is gross.
Yeah, and like in the majority of these poems, like some people notice it, some people do not. Like it talks a lot, like I want to analyze perception as well, because like most of the dates that I write about, it was before I came out as non-binary. And the only time where like it's more present is talking about the best first date poems as far as like, oh, this is how I perceive you and this is how I know you. So.
Thank you, Maya. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank
and like Jesse, I'm a professor here, so I can assure you, you are in a room full of writers. We don't call ourselves good or anything like that. I get that. But these are folks who bring it, and they really are doing great, and just lovely to be in such good company with you.
Thank you.
You are so accomplished too. So
Oh, that's so kind
I
of
mean,
you.
for a young person, and a question that I constantly get over the years is, where do you go next when you start off as a poet, got some good classroom experience, got a good social network, got a good writing practice? How do you choose a publisher? Can you walk us through the process and maybe give us some of your wisdom from
Sure.
your experience?
Yeah.
Because I know it's different for everyone, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, for these two collections. So for the first collection, I was submitting this collection to different publishers for like years, and then Game Over Books had accepted it and decided to publish it within the next year. But then for the second book, this was an interesting experience because I had published a poem through this publisher's online anthology, and the founder really liked that poem and emailed me directly asking for a manuscript. And I'm very grateful that had happened. And again, like everyone's publishing experiences are vastly different. I know that for me, I like working with smaller indie publishers because of their attentiveness to the writing and because of like their attentiveness and wanting to support you, even if they don't have that many resources. And also, like usually I have copies of my books with me, but copies of my books are coming at a much slower process right now because the large-scale indie publisher send their small press distributors went out of business and didn't tell anybody, decided to post an Instagram thing without letting any of the publishers know in advance. But luckily, I know that Game Over Books has found a new distributor, which is exciting. As far as Harbor Editions, I know that they've been fundraising as far as like, get our books out of SPD storage, please. So if you publish with like the big five, they have like a huge amount of resources and stuff like that in order to send your books everywhere. And it'd be nice to be. I have friends of mine who are published with a large publisher, and I'm very happy for them, and that is what they desire. And if that were to happen to me, that'd be great. And at the same time, like I understand, like it comes with a lot of pressure, and I understand that it comes with like, are you going to make the money back, and so on and so forth. But my friend Kaveh, who was my thesis mentor in my MFA program, like he published poetry collections, and then he published his first novel, and it's doing very successfully. So I'm always rooting for that man. I'm very excited for him. So.
As someone who mainly focuses on novelistic writing, but does like to dabble in other areas, I was wondering what drew you specifically to poetry?
What drew me specifically to poetry is that sense of release. I feel like there's a lot more breathing room with poetry, and I do want to write more fiction. And at the same time, I recognize like how much, like when it comes to fiction, I still need to let go of that release of like letting the characters do what they want on the page. And granted, that comes up with poetry too, as far as like letting the poem do what it wants on the page. But at the same time, I feel like because of the smaller format, there's more room to experiment, and there's more room to be like, okay, what is it that you're trying to say? Like, how can I be honest on the page, and how can I hold myself accountable? Because I feel like with poetry, I have more of an opportunity to be honest and transparent. Thank you all for your wonderful questions.